You know the saying that whether the elephants make love or war, the ants get stood upon?
And once more, we're back in the Gunners Club with another exciting episode.
Here with Gunnar and of course with Seuss, and we're so glad you're here. Now the world is still reeling and I think recovering from the shock of quite a convincing electoral victory.
Convincing? It was a landslide.
Well, I probably wouldn't go that far, but for the Republicans, certainly the most convincing in the last 20 years, effectively giving them control of the House, control of the Senate, and also they've got quite some influence as well on the Supreme Court, having himself handpicked 3 of the representatives there.
And the popular vote as well.
And the popular vote as well. So life is going to be an awful lot easier, I think, for Trump this time around. Now, I think for the Western world, what we're all relieved about is that there's actual certainty because there's been that majority of the vote. We're not expecting there's some contest as to whether it was a fair election.
Oh, yeah.
We're not waiting on recounts. Trump effectively won all 7 of the battleground states.
That's correct,
I mean, so it was convincing, if not a landslide. But what will the world look like under a new Trump term? He's already a known quantity. So that's something I point out to people who get sort of fears and get anguished about it. So we know who this chap is, but the political environment that he's entered into this time is a lot less stable than what it was. Let me explain.
But that's not of his doing.
Let me explain why it's a lot different. Similar countries have had changes of government. Have a look, the Tories' loss of power. Japan's LDP losing their majority. Macron having a shock result when he called a snap election. Everything seems to be going a little bit pear-shaped. Just this week, if you have a look at the German government, which has always been traditionally cobbled together with a number of parties and always the Greens as some sort of a linchpin, has fallen apart. They'll need to cobble together a government, maybe with 4 parties this time instead of 3. Not only that, movements of troops and what's going on. We now have North Korean troops, we understand, in the Ukraine, and a hot war happening there. We have a potential war in the offing with Israel, and we still have more than a motherly eye of China overlooking across the strait to Taiwan.
Oh, yes.
How's the world going to look? Well, for a start, in terms of the politics, it's going to be a more insular America. They're going to be looking inwards rather than outwards. They're going to be protecting their borders. J.D. Vance, who was the running mate, has suggested that it wouldn't be unreasonable to suggest that there would be deportations of 1 million persons per year. Yeah,
well, I mean, Trump suggested that in his running up speeches when he was still running for president.
Further to that, tariffs. Now, tariffs is something which has got the world running scared, particularly China.
Oh, yeah.
He's been banding around a figure of 60% of tariffs for Chinese goods, 10 to 20% for the rest of the world. We're hoping that doesn't include Australia.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a particular trade agreement with the US, and the idea of that was basically to give Australia a stronger toehold for agricultural goods. The sore point for America has always been dairy and sugar for some reason.
I can't understand why, but there you go.
But for America, they wanted to have more access to our markets for some pharmaceutical goods as well as for industrial products as well. So there we are. America enjoys a positive trade balance with Australia, so we're hoping we'll get out from this okay. In terms of the AUKUS deal and the submarines, it's probably going to be sold to Trump as a good deal for America because, first off, there's a positive trade balance with Australia. It's a service agreement in that they're selling intellectual technology, and that's always good when you have an advanced economy that can actually provide that sort of service. There's good money and good defence reasons for America as well.
That's right. I mean, he'll basically have a strategic base in Australia, and more troops are coming over here.
Yeah, but J.D. Vance has said just be careful with Trump because he always likes to go in, renegotiate and say, I can't believe this deal. This is the most terrible deal ever created. How could we have agreed to this? I'm going to renegotiate the deal. So there's always room for movement. You know the saying that whether the elephants make love or war, the ants get stood upon? Now, this might be the actual impact if there is a trade war between America and China. Australia depends on the strength of the Chinese economy. If they don't want our raw materials, we're in big problem.
Yeah,
again.
that's true.
But this made me think. We understand who Trump is, and we understand the world which he's entering. That's changed a lot post-COVID. But who effectively will be the real vice president? I mean, who will effectively be the vice president of the free world? Now, I know you're going to say Vance, but I'm going to say not so quick and hold my beer. I think it was love at first blush. And the first blush, I think, for Elon Musk was when he saw Trump recover from under the podium after being shot.
Yep.
Raise his fist in the air and yell, "Fight, fight, fight." He said, America needs a courageous, bold leader. And that is what Donald Trump is. He was holding back and saying he wasn't going to support either candidate. But in fact, he did more than that. He threw his weight completely behind Trump. Trump's government is very lucky in that they're not dependent so much on what we call legacy, the old heritage press. Remember in the old days it would take 3 newspapers to impeach and basically for, let's say, Nixon to lose office. Now it doesn't matter what's written. You can have a river of ink on the broadsheets and nobody cares.
Yep.
But if you've got access to things like Twitter, or what we now call X, which happens now to be owned by Elon Musk, and you've got access to other social media, you're actually doing all right. You can write your own narrative.
That's right.
And Elon Musk certainly did his bit to promote the campaign with things such as his hashtag I voted Trump and big graphic icons of a Trump as well on X. The other thing is, not only was this something which you'd find when you opened your account, but if you're a follower of Musk, and he does have 200 million followers on his own platform, you'd be getting the feeds from him as well in strong support for this. We've been seeing a lot of Musk and Trump together. So from the time that the election results were counted at Mar-a-Lago, there he was at the head table. Up to about a week afterwards, there he was still rubbing shoulders with the boss and having quite a bit of influence. It's not unusual or unnatural in the West, particularly America, for a billionaire or very successful tycoon to be involved in politics. Give you an example, John D. Rockefeller.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He sponsored politicians. He wanted reforms to industrial and labour laws. He did that quite freely. Joseph Kennedy, he financed the Kennedy boys, one of them becoming president, as you remember.
That's right.
Bloomberg, billionaire, became mayor of New York. Perot, he financed himself as an independent candidate. This is not something that's rare, but let me tell you, it means to have a lot of influence. To give you an Australian example, whether you're actually on the books as being in your office or not, it doesn't matter. So the Corporations Act Australia recognises a director as someone who's actually behind the scenes. Even if they're not there on paper, they're called a de facto director, essentially.
That's right.
And that's what I'm arguing, essentially, that Elon Musk is going to be. Maybe even the de facto vice president of the world. He's got a lot of interest to have Trump's ear. There's about $3 billion of projects simply for NASA and for SpaceX as well. So for goods he's already doing. Trump is really big on tariffs at the moment, particularly for electric vehicles. Chinese electric vehicles, the tariff is about 200%, is what he's advocating for it.
I saw an announcement that he's going to cut all those incentives for buying electric cars. And I think Elon was rubbing his hands with glee about that. Well, and for good reason, I would suggest.
Well, Elon has done rather well in that since the date of election and the 24 hours after that, his capital value in Tesla rose by 15 billion with a B American dollars. That's a hefty increase. Now, he's been invested in the campaign. He put roughly 130 million US out of his own pocket into the canvassing. Canvassing is knocking on doors. It's ringing up old ladies and counselling them on how to vote. It's that sort of thing. But he stands to gain an awful lot by doing this. Let me explain to you. Not only for the capital value of things like Tesla, but for things like the regulation of the industries he works in. He believes that from the stratosphere up into space, it's an overly regulated industry. What he wants to do is to have those regulations removed so he can play a little bit more carefree in that space.
Well, if I was him, I reckon I'd be wanting to do that too.
Yeah, there's something which made me really laugh. I think it's quite humorous. I watched a Saturday Night Live clip of him where he was calling himself the DOGE father. Now, you know the cryptocurrency thing, the Bitcoins and Ethereum,
Yep.
things like that. There's another one that's called DOGE, and it's got the face of that Japanese dog in a sort of a half smirk. And in the Saturday Night Live clip, he was, pronouncing Dogecoin to the moon. He was the Doge father, before finally admitting, look, it's all a bit of a con thing, really. But I wonder who's laughing, because he has now been appointed the one of the two heads of a non-official government department called DOGE, DOGE, named essentially because of his involvement there. It's the Department of Government Efficiency. What he's looking at doing is effectively trying to cut $2 trillion with a T US dollars from the annual budget. There's certain things you can't touch, certain sacred cows. For example, there's benefits that get paid to people. Sick benefits, unemployment benefits, Veterans Affairs benefits, that sort of stuff. Medicare, defence. But basically with things like Medicare, there still is room for improvement. Think of the fact that there's fraud in the system.
My God. Well, look at Australia's NDIS.
We need to do a video on that.
Yes.
Have a think as well of what's left over in the pie basically goes to defence. So there's room to move there as well. What he's looking at doing is kicking the guts out of the number of departments. He says that most people wouldn't be able to name all the departments that there are. There are some 200, so I bet he's right.
Yeah,
He's
easily.
sorry, I do beg your pardon. There's some 400. He's looking at reducing that to 99. It's a huge decrease. He says there's simply a lot of organisational overlap. They're talking about disassembling the administrative state. I like the concept of that. And think about this. When he bought Twitter, he had roughly 7,500 employees. He reduced it to roughly only 1,500 standing souls left.
And Twitter still hasn't fallen over, and it's still operating, and efficiently.
Well, it's become certainly more of a spokeshole to his voice and what he wants to utter.
And is that a problem, considering he owns it?
Political power is a problem in that it's something which should be in the hands of the people, hence the idea of democracy, the Greek word demos, meaning the people. It's the rule of the people. If the power is taken away from the people, then yeah, I do have a problem with that. In any event, I wonder what your thoughts are. Do you think that we are having a new de facto vice president for the world? People in the close inner circle to Trump are saying that he's now behaving as though he's co-president and letting people know that he is. And the Hungarians, you have heard this before, have a great saying, and that's fish and visitors start to smell after 3 days.
Yeah.
So I think that week at Mar-a-Lago was actually long enough. Remember, you're dealing with a relationship with someone who's very brittle.
Oh, yeah.
I recently saw the movie, it's still on at the cinemas, The Apprentice, and it talks about how Donald Trump effectively became the protege of the solicitor Roy Cohn. They met at Le Club in, I think it was 1973, and there he learnt the profound rules of attack, attack, attack.
And never admit anything.
That was the second rule. Never admit anything, deny everything. And the third one was never admit to a defeat, always claim a victory. Have a look at other relationships that he's had in the past. The one with Roy Cohn did sour for many, many years. And have a look at the most recent public relationship with Oprah Winfrey, where a few years ago he was writing that he couldn't dream of a better person to have as his vice president, to now where she's a divisive person and she should be ashamed of herself. I would just say, if I was Elon Musk, I would look at things always with an economic eye to protect your own business interests, but to make sure that you're stroking the ego of someone who is capricious by nature and not forgetful. There's a good reason why I think they use the elephant I think
Yeah.
he remembers like an elephant.
Speaking of Elon looking after his financial interest, did you see that interview that he did
I saw some of it on the Joe Rogan show.
where he was explaining that advertisers were pulling their ads or wanting to pull their ads, thereby causing him financial harm? And his response to them was, go fuck yourself. And now they're all coming back. Funny how that works.
Yeah,
when you're not
power,
intimidated.
Market power is an interesting thing, though, isn't it? You can't be coerced if you actually hold the power.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you know.
And folks, you hold the power. If you like what you see, like, subscribe, and join us for more adventures. What do you reckon? Good idea?
I think so. And the thumbs up, and the like, and the subscribe. And don't forget to give us a comment down below.
Yeah, we do like that.
We certainly do. And we'll always answer them. We will. We promise.
See ya.
Catch you on the next one.